Hi everyone, hope you guys are doing well. This is James from Divine Crochet. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I thought I'd share with you one of my favourite techniques, which is filet crochet. When I first started crocheting, I would see a lot of filet crochet pieces, and to me they just looked really daunting to do, but fundamentally it's actually quite an easy technique. In this video, I'm going to try and make this technique as accessible as I can to beginners by breaking down the steps very simply. I'll also be sharing tips and tricks with you along the way. I've already done a video on this technique, which is a slightly different method of doing filet crochet, but the method that I'm going to share today is kind of the more, I don't want to say professional, but the more universally used way of filet crochet. I still use both methods to this day, but I will say the method that I'm going to be using today makes the image that you're creating a lot clearer to see, so this is definitely a very good technique to learn. A lot of the struggles with doing filet crochet is all to just do with numbers, and that's going to be the bit that I'm going to try and simplify, but obviously if you're still having problems, I would probably go to watch my previous video and then come back to this video. So for this technique, you can use whatever yarn size and hook you would like. I would recommend that you go a little bit smaller with your hook size than you normally do. For this video, I'm going to be using 4-ply yarn and a 2mm hook. If you're going to use double knit yarn, maybe you want to use a 3 or a 3.5mm hook. Subscribe to this channel and make sure you like and comment on this video if you found it helpful. Without any further ado, we'll get straight on into how to filet crochet.
Your first step is you're going to want to find a pixel grid that you'd like to follow. I'm going to leave the one that I created for this video in the link below. I could do a whole other video on pixel grids and stitch fiddle if you would like. But for now, all we need to know is the width of the graphic. So the width of this graphic is 20 squares. We then want to take this number and times it by 3. So that's going to give us 60, and whatever number you've ended up with, you just want to add 5 to, so my number is now going to be 65. This is going to be the amount of chains we're going to start off with for our project. Now what I want to do is explain to you why we're using that number, but definitely for this video I don't want to overcomplicate things. Just remember that you want to get the number of squares in your graph along the bottom, so the width. Then you want to times that by 3, and then after you've times that by 3 you want to add 5, and that's going to be how many chains you need to make. And then from here, from our hook, we're going to count 7 chains, and this is going to be how many chains we're going to be skipping. And then the 8th chain away from our hook, that's going to be where we put our first double crochet. I'm entering my stitch into the back bump, but obviously you can go ahead and enter your hook into any point into the chain stitch. Before I continue with this row, I actually like to check that I have left 7 stitches out. So what I do in this little circle here, I'll count the 3 chains, so that should be 7 before I reach my double crochet. And because I'm happy with that, I can go ahead and chain 2. Then we're going to skip 2 chains in the chain length and work a double crochet into the 3rd chain. So what we're going to do is just repeat this pattern of chain 2, skip 2 stitches in the chain row, and then into that 3rd chain we're going to work in a double crochet. You just want to repeat this pattern of chaining 2, skipping 2 and doing your double crochet all the way down the chain length. And you'll know if you've done all of your maths correct if by the end of your row your final double crochet is in the first chain you made, and then you want to go ahead and count the amount of holes that you've created. I call these mesh boxes, which is just the holes created by the mesh. You want to make sure that you have the same amount as you counted right at the start, so for me that was 20. And then from here I'm going to chain 4, which is going to be our turning chain, which the first 2 chains count as double crochet. Then we chain 2 to emulate the chain 2 double crochet kind of design we've got going on, and then we can enter our double crochet into the next available 3 double crochet. Chain 2, skip 2, double crochet all the way down. And because as you can see in the pattern there are no coloured squares in this row, all of the squares are just going to consist of chain 2, skip 2, double crochet. You just want to go ahead and repeat that pattern all the way down the length of your row up until you reach that final stitch. Now your final stitch should go into your turning chain, so for here that was that 7 chains that we left out, so we're still going to skip 2 chain stitches and work our double crochet into the third stitch away from the stitch we have just entered. For this pattern, all of our final double crochets are going to go into a chain stitch. Just enter the stitch wherever feels comfortable for the way that you crochet. But we've built up those 2 rows and we're ready to go on to that 3rd row, which is going to be where we start introducing our filet crochet design. So we're just going to continue the pattern of chaining 4 and then working a double crochet into the next available double crochet. As you can see, before I reach my filet crochet design, I've got 9 empty squares to do, so that's going to be represented by 9 mesh boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and continue the pattern of chaining 2 double crochet until I have those 9 holes, and I'm ready to start adding in my filet crochet design. So each coloured square represents where we want to be doing 2 double crochets instead of 2 chain stitches. So for the next 6 ones of these mesh boxes, we just want to be doing double crochets with no chain stitches. Now you can either kind of work this visually, or as a beginner, what I would do is I would decide how many squares I need to go along, which is 6, times that by 3, which is going to be 18. Now I know, not including this first double crochet that I've done, I need to do 18 double crochets. So I'm showing you here, one way you can do this is by doing 2 double crochets around those chain 2s that you've created, or what I do, which I think has a slightly neater final effect, is doing 1 double crochet into each chain stitch. So what one square is going to represent is me doing 2 double crochets like this, both of them into or around the chain stitch, and then finishing it off with a double crochet. So I'm just going to continue this pattern of just doing 1 double crochet into each stitch. Remember, we're changing chain stitches to double crochets. We're not adding or taking away any stitches. So for that reason, it is kind of easiest once you get the hang of this technique to think of a double crochet just replacing a chain stitch, and obviously you're just going to work that into the relevant stitch below, which in this case is just going to be a mesh stitch. You'll know if you've done this all right if your final stitch is on top of a double crochet, and once you've done that, you can go ahead and just check visually that it all looks right. So you can see I have those 6 blank mesh boxes below, which means that those 6 boxes above are kind of represented correctly. This means we can continue with the chain to skip 2 double crochet up until we reach our final box, where we should be doing our double crochet into the 2nd chain we made, or the 3rd chain away from the double crochet. Then we're going to turn our work, chain 4, and then continue the pattern. And as you can see, for this next row, we need to start off by adding 1 extra mesh box to the right side, and then add 2 mesh boxes to the left side. What you can see is just visually I'm adding those double crochets instead of chains 1 mesh box earlier, but you can also see that I had 4 blank mesh boxes before we start. So I would kind of use the conjunction of both of those facts to know that this is where I need to start adding in my design. Also remember, when we're reading this graph, we're going to read left to right, then we would read right to left before going back to left to right. So we're changing the direction that we're reading it each time we move up a line. Now, to determine when we need to end this row of just doing double crochets, you can either do what we did before, where we would get 9 mesh boxes and times that by 3 to give us 27, and that's how many double crochets there should be after the final double crochet of that mesh, so that should be 28 double crochets in total. But for me at this point, I can see that I need to add 6 more double crochets in order to complete the line, as that would be filling in 2 mesh boxes that in the row below were blank but in this row are coloured. This will be the point that I stop adding double crochets and go back to my original pattern. I can use this technique up until this row here, where I'll need to add in a mesh stitch in the kind of sea of double crochets. So what I can see is I need to do 12 boxes before I reach this point, which is going to be 36 extra double crochets. So I'll create those 2 blank mesh boxes before I then do those 36 double crochets, or 37 including that first double crochet, before I then chain 2, skip 2 stitches and add in a double crochet. Now, this is kind of what I would do in conjunction with actually looking at your project. So as you can see, if we finish off the double crochets for this row and we just have a look at our project, we can see that that mesh stitch is added on top of this row of mesh stitches. We can use references like this to not only check that we're following the graph correctly, but to make sure that we're not adding or taking away any stitches. Now, you just want to use all of the methods that I talked about previously to work your way up this graph. As I say, I would use a mix of timesing the squares by 3 and looking at your work visually and seeing how your work tracks to check that you're not adding or taking away any of your stitches. The best way you can check that you're doing your work correctly is double checking that all of your original double crochets used to make the mesh stitch stay as double crochets. So no matter how many times you alternate your chain stitches from chain stitches to double crochet, from double crochets to chain stitches to create your design, the stitches that were double crochets at the start to create the mesh should always stay the same. So it's only the 2 chain stitches in between that are going to change to double crochets and then change back to chain stitches.
That's going to be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something and found it helpful. Filet crochet kind of seems daunting when you look at it, but when you really break it down, it's not the hardest technique, because realistically you're just going to be using double crochets and chains. It's learning how to follow the grids that can be kind of hard, but with what I've shared in this video, hopefully you find it quite easy. If you guys have any questions or you have anything to add to this video, like any tips that you use when filet crocheting, please let me know in the comments below. Please have a good rest of your day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.